Us ready to get started. So thank you very much for joining us this morning for our Build a Better Intranet with SharePoint event. As you already know, the event is all about the capabilities of SharePoint with the intranet and the benefits that it can bring to your organisation. There's just a few notes to cover before we get started. So the session is being recorded, so if you do, that we'll be sending out, after the event. So if you do want to catch up later on or share the recording with anybody within the organisation or any colleagues of yours, you can do. We'll also be sending out the slides as well. You'll also notice that you're on mute at the moment, so we do encourage you to use the chat function. We do have one of our experts, Josh, on hand to answer any questions throughout the session and at the end as well. So that's the kind of main points just to cover, just to make sure that you're aware. And now I'm going to pass you on to our team of experts. So we've got Alex Innes and Graham McLean, who the session will be led by, who will be running the session. So I'm just going to pass over to Graham just now, and I hope you enjoy the event. And if you do have any questions, please do use the chat functionality. Thanks very much.
Hi Zopash, thanks for that. Morning everyone. So yes, welcome to our event, Build a Better Intranet with SharePoint. Today we're going to go through a number of different parts of really kind of building out a better intranet. So we're going to talk about the modern SharePoint experience. We're then going to talk about SharePoint kind of out of the box functionality. So, what we mean by that is just, what's available using the features and the functionality that come within SharePoint. So just really through kind of configuration as opposed to custom development. And then we're going to look at some best practices when implementing an intranet. And then we'll touch on some of the kind of Microsoft Viva stack of technologies that can build on top of the intranet that you have as well. Then we'll look at a number of just case studies that we've got past customers, and then we've got a Q&A session at the end as well if there's any questions. So as Zopash mentioned, I'll be taking you through the first lot of slides. So I'm Graham McLean, I head up the modern workplace practice for Bridgel, and I'll be joined, so about maybe halfway, I'll switch over to Alex. And Alex is one of the SharePoint consultants, and he'll be taking you through the second half of the slides as well. I've also got another one in my team, Josh, who'll be manning the chat. So if there are any questions as we go along, as Zopash had said, if you just post the question into the chat, then Josh will be able to come back and answer that as well. We'll also maybe pick some of those questions that have come into the chat to go through in the Q&A session at the end as well. Okay, so first of all, just a bit of an introduction to Bridgel for those maybe new that haven't heard of us before. So we're based in Glasgow. We've got around 35 staff, established in 2002, and we really focus on a few different kind of pillars, if you like. So we've got the modern intelligent workplace, which covers SharePoint. It covers Power Platform, so Power Apps and Power Automate. It also covers Dynamics CRM as well. And then we've got the managed IT services and support. So really wrapping up all of your IT service desk needs into one kind of service, as well as migrating to the cloud and setting up Microsoft 365 as well. We also have a custom development and a data and AI practice, and we also have a couple of products, one in the kind of innovation space called Smart Crowds, which manages all your innovation tasks, and one in the water space called Trevi, which manages some of the kind of billing aspects of the commercial water market. So really, across those pillars, we advise for customers. So we carry out, upfront consultancy around bits of work that they might want to do, IT strategy, change strategy, those types of things. We'll implement the solution, and then we'll provide ongoing support for that solution as well. We're a 10 times Microsoft Gold partner, and we're also one of only 26 worldwide preferred partners of the Microsoft Content Services Group. So what that does is it gives us some really interesting insight into the Microsoft engineering team in Redmond around SharePoint and some of the other kind of content services technologies such as Viva and things like that, which we'll cover later on. That really just helps us see, where the product's going, and also gives us a chance to kind of input and shape the direction from what we are seeing from customers and what customers are looking for. We're also ISO 9001 certified and 27001 certified, and we hold Cyber Essentials as well. So we get a selection of customers across private and public sector, across a number of different industry verticals. So sample of our customers shown there, but work across a number of different industry verticals, across a number of different sectors as well. Okay, so just moving on to the first lot of slides here. So I've just noticed that somebody having a question saying the slides are not none. I'll let Pash deal with that. So yeah, just having a look at some of the common reasons why intranets fail or kind of fall out of favour. So first reason, kind of outdated structure and content. So just thinking about, does the structure represent the current company structure that you have, and have you kept it up to date? Is it kept up to date? How do users know that it's kept up to date? So if they go and visit, if they're looking for a particular document, how do they know that's the most recent document? One of the main things that we see time and time again is people come into us saying, our intranet is kind of out of date, and people don't, as soon as people don't think that the documents or content are current, then that just, it's like a kind of descending spiral, if you like. People start to think, oh well, actually it's not the latest information, and they start going asking people for information instead of that. So anything that you can do to kind of reinforce those documents, that content being up to date, can really help keep that content fresh. So that can be things like on your documents being able to show extra information, such as who authored that HR policy, for example, who last reviewed that HR policy, what was the date that it was last reviewed, so that you can see some of that information when you're looking at the policy as well, and that's current. So the next section would be unclear governance. So if you've got a number of different people updating your intranet, how do those content editors know how to update that intranet properly? Do they know what method to use at what time to send out information? So do they know when they should be using that kind of all users email? Do they know when they should be talking to people in chat, posting stuff onto the website versus putting it on the intranet, using the social media feeds? What's the kind of right audience for the right people at the right time? So another part of the work that we do is kind of helping people with this idea of what tool when. You've got SharePoint, you've got Teams, you might have Yammer as well. What's the right kind of communication tool for the right audience, and who should be using what one at different times as well. And then broken links. So I guess this goes hand in hand with the kind of poor user experience again. It's just back to this idea that you're breaking trust with the solution. If people start clicking on things and the link's broken, or it goes to an old page, or it doesn't go anywhere, then people start to question the whole content on your intranet. And then content sprawl. So just having multiple versions of the same document or multiple copies of the document. Again, you're just it's kind of bringing that doubt in. Which one's the latest? All these pages say the same thing. How do I know which one is the kind of authoritative source? So it's just trying to make sure that you can organize it in such a way that if you have a file that does need to be put in different places, that's the same file, and you're linking back to the same content. So you have the kind of authoritative content there. And then poor user experience. So I guess as an overriding kind of concept, if users don't like using the system and it's not easy for them to use, then they'll just stop using it. And one of the things to think about around that is not just the actual your intranet site, but think about other aspects of that as well. So, do users need to use a VPN to log in to access the system? Do they need to be in a specific place? Do they need to use a specific device? All these things and all these different ways of logging in and having to go to a VPN, things that make it fussy, if you like, for a user to get to the intranet. They don't help the user experience. So, start thinking about the journeys that users will have to get to your intranet and how they'll consume that information, and try and make it as easy as possible for them to do that. Okay, so we'll move on. We'll have a look at the modern SharePoint experience and have a look at some of the experiences there. So you may have heard this term modern SharePoint being bandied about. SharePoint Online, when it first came out, and for a good number of years now, had what at the time was modern, but is now being called Classic. So if you've had your SharePoint Online tenant for a while, or you're using SharePoint on-premise still, you're probably using what they call the Classic experience, and that's the experience that you see on the left-hand side of the slide there. So it's been around for close to kind of 2 decades. It was, good at the time. It was very kind of tile-based. Microsoft have moved to this experience on the right-hand side, which is now called the modern experience. That's been built from mobile up, so it's fully responsive. It also looks a lot better. It looks like a more modern experience. It looks more user-friendly, and it has some really good new functionality as well. If you are using still the Classic experience, the experience on the left, that's something that Microsoft, well, they still support it. They are no longer developing on it, and they are no longer adding features to it. So it will kind of over time, they've started moving things like, if you've got a Classic experience, you'll get modern list experiences and modern document library experiences. So they've started to mix that into the Classic experience. So if you are still in Classic, it's something that you should consider is moving to modern to take advantage of the functionality, and being able just to kind of get that supportability and take advantage of the new features as well. So when thinking about a good intranet, it needs to be accessible from anywhere. It needs to be kind of simple to manage, easy for users to create and share content. So the key things really are around the kind of knowledge sharing and discovery of knowledge, communication and employee experiences, and productivity and user engagement. So looking at these 4 aspects then that are on the slide. So the landing site for your organization. So what should users see on the main intranet site? What's important to them? So what are the key kind of like 5, maybe 10 things that you want to get across to the whole organization? You want the whole organization to see when they land on the homepage. Then secondly, the branding. So create your theme, have a think about what theme you would like. Now what I would say is, in terms of SharePoint, you're not looking for like pixel perfect, you're not designing a like end user kind of website here. SharePoint works best when you are effectively adding logos and some branding colors and some parts that just kind of remind you whereabouts you are in the organization. So if that's HR, then it may be a certain color. If it's in marketing, then that might be in a certain color as well, and that kind of indicates whereabouts you are within the intranet to you. But keep to your kind of the corporate colors, keep to the color palette, keep your use of color and logos fairly light, and don't try and fully brand it up, because that's SharePoint is a framework that you're building on top of, and the more that you're almost trying to work against it if you try and fully brand it up. Okay, so organisation, the third point across, just organising your sites. So have a think about, how does your organisation work? Does it make sense to kind of split your organisation out by directorates or by departments, or does it make sense to do it by geography or functional area? What do these different areas have to say to the wider organisation? And we'll come on to that when we talk a wee bit more about hubs later on. And then the last point, just consistency. So use site designs and use templates, again, which we'll talk about in a wee bit more detail later on, to keep common areas consistent. So that if you're going to maybe HR and then you go to marketing, those two areas, well, they've got different information on them. They have a bit of consistency. They have a kind of theme, that they share in terms of their layout, so that it's common, it's easy to navigate, and you don't have different sites for different sections, so that it's easy for people to consume that information because they know what it looks like. They're used to that kind of pattern. Okay, so now thinking about some of the ways and just digging in a wee bit deeper into some of the ways that SharePoint can help you with this. So SharePoint has a concept called home sites, and what that can do is that can help you with your effectively like your landing page for your intranet. So there's a number of different templates that can be used, and I'll come on to them later on. But effectively, you can take one of these templates and you can mark that as your home site. What that does, you've got an example there on the right-hand side, is it marks any news that comes from that site as being authoritative for the organisation. So if that news gets rolled up or that news gets pushed elsewhere, then you will see that as being marked as news for the organisation, and that is effectively an authoritative news source. So that's quite good for users if they're looking about and they are coming across news from different places. They'll be able to see quite easily through a tag that is organisation news, so they know that has been centrally published and it is authoritative for the organisation. The other thing is that kind of search bar in the top of that slide there. It provides integrated search across the whole tenant from the home site. So you've got one place there where you can search across absolutely everything. And the other thing is for a mobile experience, it then provides one-click access. So if you go into the SharePoint mobile application and you select home from there, it will take you straight to this home site. So it will take you straight to your landing page. So it makes it easier for people who are on the move to be able to access this as well. So that we would recommend that you take effectively that kind of landing page and make that a home site as well. Okay, so just moving on to hub sites. So the idea behind these hub sites is that they would effectively sit, the way to think of them is they sit a level below the landing page, although physically they all sit at the same level, but conceptually they effectively sit below. So the idea would be that you would have hub sites for maybe like HR, for marketing, maybe leadership, facilities, however your organisation is made up. So if we consider HR, you may have you create an HR hub site, and then associated to that site, maybe further sites that are within HR. So things like payroll, learning and development, organisational change. The reason for attaching those other sites to that hub site is that the hub site provides kind of common navigation. So it can provide a navigation that helps you get around those other sites that are associated to the hub site. It also provides a common look and feel, so it keeps everything HR in this example related across those sites as well, and it provides search across those sites. The other thing that it can do is it can also aggregate news up to the hub site, so that if you have information that you want to get out from payroll, that can be pushed up to the HR hub site. And another idea of the hub site is that the hub site is effectively, like in HR's example, it's HR's window into the organisation. So it's HR's way of distributing information into the wider organisation that they need to know. So apart from so when organisations come around to potentially restructure and reorganise, then previously what would have had to happen was organisations would have had to take the sites that they had under their old kind of structure, and they would have had to create a new site under the new structure, so under somewhere else. So if somebody had moved from one directorate to another, if a department had moved from one directorate to another, then you would have had to take the site for that department and recreate it under the new directorate and migrate all the content across. Now with the hubs, what we're able to do is effectively just deallocate from one hub and allocate to the other one, and then they are then underneath that directorate. So it means that any kind of reorganisation of the organisation, any kind of restructuring of the organisation is much easier to do, because you're effectively just pointing to a different hub site, and then you're inheriting everything that comes from that hub site. So as I said, the navigation, the look and feel, and news and things like that. Okay, so just thinking about that concept, then what should be a hub in your organisation. So you can have multiple hubs, but they should reflect the kind of main areas of your organisation. So there's some examples there where that may be departments, it may be kind of group all the projects together, group communities together. It may be by location, so it could be by sales region or where your offices are based. I would say most commonly we do see it by function. So we do usually see HR, finance and IT. But if you think about how your organisation works and also how your organisation is structured, that will give you a good key to your hubs and how they should be structured. So the idea that I used with the HR and then having the different parts of HR underneath that, you do the same with finance and you do the same with IT, but effectively the HR, finance and IT hubs would be the main window for those areas back to the rest of the organisation. Okay, so just looking at some of the site types that you can have. There's two main kind of site types that we talk about at the top level of an intranet. You've got communications sites and you've got Teams sites. So these are really just different templates that can be used. So on the left hand side there, we see a communication site. And really that's for showcasing information out to the rest of your organisation. So you'd want to maybe have cross links across the different places. You'd want to have news on there being distributed out to the wider organisation, have important information there that you want to distribute to the whole organisation as well. And then on the right hand side, you've got a team site, and a team site is really meant for more kind of internal collaboration, if you like. So collaboration on a project, planning an event, or working through some kind of objective or some kind of incentive. So they're really, they are kind of tied together for more kind of group working, if you like. The team sites on the right hand side, they're tied to what they call a Microsoft 365 group, and that enables them to use some of the wider functionality within Office 365, such as Microsoft Teams. So being integrated with Microsoft Teams and using things like Planner and some of the other functionality as well. Okay, and then lastly from me, before I hand over to Alex, just to touch on the what we call site designs. So these really can be applied to both the communication sites and to team sites. And what they do is they effectively apply a set of steps to a site once it's created. Now, the benefit to that is that it ensures that you can get consistency across these different sites. So if you need to create a new hub, for example, a new hub site, or you need to create a new site for something, you can ensure that that's similar to other sites that you've created. So for example, you'll go and create a new site. It will give that a kind of naming convention. Some of the steps could be to go and create a new list or a new library in there, to create some additional columns, to apply a theme to that site, and to set up a logo. So that helps to set that consistency between all the sites in your intranet as well, while giving you the control to be able to create your own sites, so they don't need to all be set up ahead of time. Okay, I'm just going to hand over now to Alex, who will take you through the SharePoint out-of-the-box functionality and talk to you in a bit more detail about some of the more kind of detailed aspects available.
Thanks, Graham. I will now go through some of the SharePoint out-of-the-box functionality. So when we say out-of-the-box, it means like no custom development or any kind of in-depth coding or anything. It's kind of out of the box. You can customize it, but most of the structure is there in place for you. So first one we'll talk about is the news functionality. So news can be added to your SharePoint sites. So as Graham said, your communication sites and your team sites, you can add news to them. These news articles contain graphics, rich text, images, and you can make them quite good looking, quite eye-catching. One of the great features of news as well is you can have news. So say you have your HR hub site and you have a few team sites sitting underneath your HR hub site. You can aggregate all your team news into your hub site news. So as kind of Graham mentioned, your HR could be, say, a kind of a picture hole for the rest of the company. They can see that news at that level, or as a kind of aggregated place for news. And that's, again, as we said, out of the box functionality for SharePoint. There's no custom development needed to use those features. The next, so the social aspect. So typically what we would recommend is that social interaction is probably better based with your Yammer and Teams. They're better placed for kind of user interaction and kind of social interaction. Teams, you can have your one-to-one chats or one-to-many chats in your groups. Yammer, you have groups where you have this idea of conversations where users can contribute to conversations, and you can add some things like graphics or like questions in there that users can answer and have kind of conversations around. So that's more for your social aspect of SharePoint. In terms of integrating it into your intranet, you can integrate Yammer into a SharePoint page with the use of web parts, which is, again, an out of the box feature for SharePoint. Moving on, SharePoint has something called the Microsoft Lookbook. And what that is, it's a gallery of templates that you can add to your SharePoint environment. So they have a number of different templates stretching from kind of different organizational type templates to kind of school solutions, team solutions. You can go into the Lookbook, have a look at all the templates, and it's almost a one-click add them into your SharePoint environment. So I'll go through a couple of popular Lookbook templates that Microsoft provides. So going through, there's an employee onboarding template. As it says, it's for your onboarding new employees. So you can get this template and customize it as you want. You could add things in like staff handbooks, helpful links for new employees, so like company policies, guidelines, and you can have all your information in this one place. And this template structures it all for you. So all you need to do is kind of change the content behind that template, and the structure is all there for you to use. And as I said, it's a few clicks, gets added into your SharePoint environment. Next one I'll look at is the Brand Hub. This is really useful. It is, again, a template site for you to add all your branding information. So all your company imagery, company graphics can be added into here, even things like your company branding guidelines. So what graphics should be used in X, Y, and Z. Things like word templates. So if you have branded word templates, you can add these in here. And so I'm saying like PowerPoint templates. You can have these all sitting in a single place inside your SharePoint intranet for users to access and consume. And Microsoft provide a kind of templated solution there for you. Last one on these lookbooks is Learning Pathways, is one of my favorite ones. Learning Pathways is a solution that lets a template that you can add, which has a vast range of kind of learning pages. So it provides a vast range of kind of videos and text guides on how to use the full Microsoft suite. So has learning pages for things like Microsoft Teams, excuse me, SharePoint, and Office 365 applications too. And you can surface all these through this Learning Pathways. What you can do as well, you can pick and choose which ones you want to show your users as well. So you can go through and customize that experience for them. So say you haven't rolled out Teams yet to your organization, you can, you can hide all the teams kind of learning pathways. So you're not showing it to them right now because they don't have access to it, but say later down the road when they do get access to it, you can then share these. Again, another fantastic feature is that you can add your own content to it as well. So say you have a finance application that you already have written guides for, you can add these guides to your learning pathways to make like a one-stop shop for all your kind of training facilities. So learning pathways is a fantastic resource you can add from the lookbook. So next, again, still in the out-of-the-box options, I'm going to talk you through some of kind of three aspects that SharePoint uses, which are out-of-the-box solutions. And what I'll do is I'll talk you through them, but what I'll do is I'll give you a quick run through of what these are. So I'll just quickly switch over to show you Microsoft Forms. So I've got a form here that I've already built. Excuse me. So Microsoft Forms, as it says, is a product by Microsoft. You can build forms. As you can see on the screen, I've got a new employee form with a number of questions there. You can build these forms and you can build out these questions. And then what you can do is you can share these forms to users inside your organization for them to fill out and return to you. What you can do as well is you can integrate these forms into your SharePoint intranet as well. So instead of having to come out to the forms website, they can be inbuilt into your SharePoint page. So users can fill these in and submit them back to you, and you can review the responses. The questions you can add, there's a whole host of questions and different types of questions you can add to these forms. So there's choices, text, ratings, date, you can see at the bottom there, ranking, a kind of a ratings kind of chart. So you have a number of questions with like a 1 to 10 rating you can add, file upload, net promoter score, and then you can add sections as well if you want to organize it into different sections. Forms can be as complex as you want. So you can have branching options. So say in the kind of which department, if I chose IT operations, that could then branch off to another set of questions, or same if they hit SharePoint, it can go down a different route of questions. You can have it fairly simple or as kind of more complicated. Within forms as well, you can see all the responses. So I've got a couple responses that I've put in. A couple of metrics here of things like you've got 2 responses, average time to complete, and then you can see all your responses to the form. You can open these in Excel, so get an Excel document of all your responses, or you can kind of review them in this screen. And What I'll move on to next is SharePoint lists. What you can do with this information is you can surface that in a SharePoint list as well, which can be part of your intranet too. So I'll give you a quick demo of some out-of-the-box functionality of SharePoint lists. So SharePoint lists. So this is a SharePoint list called Issue Tracker. Again, it is a out-of-the-box list you can add to a SharePoint site, which has a number of columns formatted, and they got some nice graphics in there and nice colors in there that you can see. SharePoint lists is Excel style data, so you have columns with column headers and different types of data in these columns. SharePoint takes that a step further. So unlike Excel, you don't when multiple people try and edit them or work on them, you don't have the issues of only one user can edit information at once. A list is open to everyone and everyone can kind of chop and change. What I see one of the great advantages of lists is that it's great at storing information there, and anyone can come and see this information. They can click into it to see a bit more information. But what can happen off the back of someone creating a new list item is this kind of automation that can happen. So, for example, now this is an issue tracker. So say I want to raise a new issue, I can hit the new issue button, fill out the information required, and then hit the save button at the bottom. And what can happen is when I hit that save button, that can generate an email to say I'm part of the service desk, or I'm manning the SharePoint issue tracker. That can then email me to say that something's happened. There's many different ways that SharePoint list information can kick off automation flows, and some of those are out of the box options as well. So that's a quick overview of lists, which are really useful. The next one I'm going to go on to is Power BI reports. So Power BI reports are kind of self-service analytics. You can create like interactive dashboards and reports from your own data sources. So here I've got some sample data on new hires for a company, and I've got kind of five graphs here. So one in the top left is our new hire counts of new hires same period last year, and active year-over-year percentage change by month. So I can see here in the green that's this year's hires. So I can see up into June, July, August, we've got quite a lot of hires, and it tapers off and it's quite low in January. But so we've got that kind of new hire in the middle of the year. But say I just want to see, I've got other graphs here and I can see it's got other data, but say I just want to really focus in on 1 month. So say I want to focus in on April. This is where the interactive part of Power BI comes in. You can click on one of the reports here, and it changes all the graphs just to filter on this part of data. So I can see, well, actually in our North division, those hires are quite small. So in the North, it's not a huge amount there. And you can click through the data to kind of filter that down to what you want to see. So say I just want to focus on female hires. I can then click on that, and again, it'll filter all the data. I can still see the original data, but it kind of highlights what I wanted to filter on. So that's where that interactive dashboard hands in, and you can, depending on your data, you can filter through and kind of drill down into the aspects that you want to see. So that's Power BI. So let me just jump back to the slides, 2 seconds. So those are 3 aspects of SharePoint that you can get out of the box and kind of really get going with your intranet. So I'm now going to move on to some best practices. It's best practice around your SharePoint intranet. So I've got some topics here that we say are fairly important for kind of best practices around your new intranet that you're looking to build. So the first one being don't lift and shift. Don't lift and shift. So back when I was in high school, one of my teachers said in, crap out. And it's the kind of same with don't lift and shift. You need to look at what you've got at the moment, look at what issues you have at the moment with your intranet, and then make decisions based on that. So don't just basically pick up your current internet and put it into Office 365 or SharePoint Online, because you're going to inherit all the old issues you had with your current solution in Office 365, just with maybe some different graphics. So you really want to just analyze what you've got and kind of change what you've got, and that kind of rolls into data-driven decisions. So you want to you should be looking at what works for your intranet, what pages are people visiting. So say you have 100 pages in your intranet or 100 sites in your intranet, and the top 10% or the top 10 of those get 100% of the hits, and the rest of the pages or sites don't get looked at. Do you really need to move them into Office 365 and SharePoint, or should you be looking at how users access those pages, or how would a user access those pages that people don't look at? And is it too hard? Do you need to move them somewhere else in the intranet, or is that data just irrelevant? So you really want to be looking at the metrics of what you've currently got and then making decisions based on that. And again, that kind of leads us on to a user-centric rollout. It's your users who are using your intranet. It sounds fairly obvious, but you want to make decisions based on that. So start to create like stakeholder meetings and focus groups. Look at what pain points those users have. So if they're saying, well, yeah, for me to access data, I need to go to this link, to there, to there, to there, and that's all I do, and that's what the whole of my team do, then you maybe want to make decisions on, well, that part of the internet, maybe you should move it up to a more prominent part of your intranet. Look at what kind of issues your users have and start to make decisions on how you build your intranet from them. Following on from that, new features. So SharePoint Online and Office 365 are always making improvements and adding new features. So you could do things like have a monthly meeting or a meeting every few months to review what new features SharePoint is bringing out and how they can add value to your intranet. So say a new feature adds something that allows a department to be like, oh, that's great, we really want to use that. Then you can allow them to use that and kind of bring more value to your intranet. And again, then looking at the wider Microsoft stack. So Microsoft has SharePoint, but has a plethora of other applications that sit around it that you can add loads of value to your intranet. So, for example, I mentioned some automation. So they have a product called Power Automate, which you can automate business processes. So say you have a document needs to get approved, and typically that would be you email it to X, Y, or Z. They then look at the document and read through it, then send it back to you. You're relying on you to remember to send that to them, and then them to look at it and then reply to you. You can automate that to be, say, well, at a click of a button, it will automatically send an email to X, Y, or Z to be, you need to review this document. You can then approve it or reject it, and it will remind them to do that as well. So if they haven't reviewed it in a few days, it can remind them to do it. So you can build a plethora of automation around your intranet just by using the wider Microsoft stack as well. So I move on to the next aspect, which is governance in best practice. So Graham's touched on governance previously in the slides, but it's hugely important to start thinking about governance really early on in the process of building your intranet. It governs the rules about how your internet grows and how it's built. So so say as part of your governance, you say a normal user can't create a new SharePoint site. And you specify that in your governance. Later down the line, say you're looking at learning pathways and you're surfacing learning material there. You don't want to then surface the training material that says this is how a user creates a site, because part of your governance says that they can't do that, and that just creates some confusion. So looking at what your governance is, what your users can do, what permissions they have, and kind of clearly define that in your governance will give you a good set of rules to be like to kind of build your intranet going forward. So start to look at your governance really early on in the process. Don't leave it till kind of later on down the line. Next, we'll look at retention and deletion policies for best practice. Again, much like your governance, you should be thinking about these quite early on as well. They don't need to be implemented early on, because you can implement retention policies when things are already in place. But just having an idea of what sites should have what retention. So you can have multiple retention policies on a single site, and you can define what documents have what retention. But it will save you a huge amount of time down the line. From experience, from what I've seen, is departments will do annual reviews of their data to be like, oh, well, what's hit our internal review policy is. So they'll go through every document to say, oh, has that hit 5 years, or has that hit 5 years, or no, it hasn't, no, it hasn't. Setting up a retention policy will do that all for you. It'll monitor all your documents in a site or a document library, and will say, oh, this has hit 5 years. I'll then delete that document or do X, Y, and Z what's specified in the retention policy. So you can do things like, if a document hits 5 years old, it can then email a group of people being like, this document's hit 5 years old. Do you want to delete it, or do you want to extend it? So it'll save you a huge amount of time down the line if you implement these retention policies. So having them thought about early on in the process is I would say recommended. Now we're going to go on and have a quick look at the kind of future of the internet, the kind of products that are up and coming and are really interesting. So the first one is Viva Connections. Viva Connections is a single point of entry for kind of employees and an employee experience. It aggregates information from around your SharePoint site into a single pane of glass. And what it can do is it can search for content as well. So much like your homepage, this is what Viva Connection does. It kind of aggregates information together for you to consume. And it can be used, it can be viewed on your desktop, your smartphone with the SharePoint app. So it's a really good place for like a single source of news and to be able to search for content. And it uses the Microsoft AI to kind of gather this information together. Next topic is Viva Topics. I think Viva Topics is really, really interesting, and it was Graham who told me a really good analogy about this. So the technicals behind Viva Topics is it surfaces keywords and topics and gathers information around those topics. But on a kind of more user level, what it does is, see you've just joined a new company, and you've joined the SharePoint team, and you want to know, oh, well, I do SharePoint, but I want to know about Office 365, or who's a champion of say some other part of like Power Apps or Power Automate. What Viva Topics does, it will see your question of Power Apps, and then say, well, I know Graham talks about Power Apps quite a lot, or Power Automate, and it says, well, this is what Graham has talked about in Power Apps. He's probably the person you need to go speak to. So it kind of surfaces information that a new starter, a new employee probably won't know, but someone who's more versed in the company, who's been there for a while, will know. So it gathers that information around. The same for things like projects. So if you start, you'll be like, well, I want to know about this project because I'm using parts of it for my new project. You can search on the project name, and it'll be like, oh, well, these people have contributed data to this project, so you probably want to speak to them. So it has that kind of bringing data together and surfacing it, so it's much easier to find that style of information, or who's worked on what project, who knows what about X technology, and that brings it all together. So Viva Topics is really, really interesting, and could be a great addition to your intranet. Now I'm going to pass back to my colleague Graham to talk about some case studies that we've done with Bridgel. So Graham, I'll pass back to you.
Great, thanks. So yeah, we just wanted to finish off, just probably take a couple of minutes before we jump on to any questions, just to go through a couple of the case studies here. So the first one really was Forest Research. So they were looking for an intranet, as well as really a bit of kind of document management. So what we did for them was we did some upfront user research with them and with their users down in Alice Holt, and also in Edinburgh as well. to determine really what it was they were looking for and what they were looking to get out of an intranet. And we delivered a modern SharePoint intranet, which had their kind of theme, their design. We took the users through the training so they knew how to use the content management system. So it had some formal, intranet homepage, some hub sites, and then moved off into the more slightly kind of informal team sites. But they have a template with them, so that they're keeping that kind of consistency as well. So we helped them all the way through, helped them with, they were migrating the documentation themselves, but helped them, kind of move that along and helped them post-launch as well. So do you want to move on to the next one, Alex, please? Mental welfare. So again, a smaller bit of work this, but we helped them set up a new intranet using Microsoft 365. I think the key part for them was a template which allowed them to. They have a call center, which they get quite a lot of questions about. What is the latest kind of policy documentation? What's the latest government advice? What's the latest kind of legal position on certain things? And what they wanted to be able to do was be able to answer questions quite quickly. So we came up with a template for them, which was, they had the main intranet page, but then they had this Q&A section, which allowed them to dive down into, if somebody was on the phone to them, dive down into key parts and find information that was related to the key parts. So that's worked quite well for them to be able to get quite a lot of policy and quite a lot of content distilled down into I would search for that, but using these terms. So by tagging that with quite a lot of different terms, being able to then drill down and find that quite quickly. So that's been quite useful for them as well. Okay, you move forward next one, Alex, please. And then the last one was just West Lothian College. So they had approached us with a view to just redesigning their kind of core intranet for the college. Again, worked with their stakeholders just to have a look at branding, have a look at what they wanted to have in their solution, and set them up with the intranet page and also some hub sites. They've got a wee bit of information on the hub sites, but we've set that up in such a way that if they want to then start building some kind of internal sites off of the back of that or whatever, then they can do that in the future as well. So very much a kind of phase one to put them onto the right footing for future. Great. Did you want to move on to the next slide? So, yep, that's really us. We've seen quite a few questions come through in the chat, so thanks for everyone that's posted the chat, and thanks to Josh for answering the questions as well. Are there any other questions that anyone wants to, be able to come up, put their hand up and ask a question or post a question into chat, and we'll do our best to answer it as well. Nope, don't see any others coming up. We've seen the question there, will the session be recorded and shared afterwards? So yeah, the session's been recorded. The slides and the recording of the session will be shared afterwards. And obviously, if you have asked a question and we've posted an answer to you, if you are looking for more information, then feel free to get in touch and we can give you some more information. Jodie, a question from you: what sizes are those businesses? So Forest Research has around about maybe 300 people. Mental Welfare Commission is probably around about maybe 100 people. And in the college, it's kind of different. The size of the college, I can't remember the exact numbers of staff, but it's a reasonable size college for that one as well. Okay, another question about, you said Yammer can be integrated into the site landing page. How does Teams work with it? So yeah, Yammer can be.
Here are some pictures that match.
Yammer can be brought into the SharePoint site, and web parts can be placed on the page for Yammer. In terms of Teams, there is now a Yammer and Teams integration. So there's an application that you can put on Teams, which will surface all the conversations and things for Yammer as well. So if that's something you're interested in, Suzanne, then feel free to get in touch and we can help you out with that.
Good. Oh, I think there's one more question there. I think we'll probably round up then. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll pass you back to Zopass just to round up.
Yeah, okay, so just a big thank you again for everybody for joining the session this morning. Really appreciate you joining us, and thank you very much to Alex and Graham for the very informative presentation, and to Josh for answering some of the questions. Just a final note really to say that as I've said before, the slides and the recording will be sent out shortly. And if you do have any questions in the meantime, I'll put a little note in the chat as well where you can contact us if there's anything that wasn't answered or maybe you think of later on. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you have a really nice day. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Thanks
everyone.
Bye.
Cheers now.